As you can see, my talk today is on engineering mobile experiences. What that means is I'm going to be talking a bit about apps specifically in the engineering industry. So just to give you a little bit of context and establish our credentials, I work for a company called Oricon. We're a global engineering consultancy. As you can see, we've got lots of staff, we've got lots of offices. We've been offering visualization for about 15 years. I've been using Unity since version 3, which is about 6 or 7 years now. And this year we announced the formation of Unsigned Studio. And what Unsigned Studio is a creative technology and 3D visualization company. So we're essentially a very small kind of creative unit that sits inside a much bigger engineering consultancy. We are wholly owned by Oricon, and we basically combine engineering with technology to make a lot of cool stuff. And you can see some of the things that we do: films, images, apps, platforms, a whole bunch of different things. So I'll just very quickly play through our show reel, just to give you an idea of some of the work we're doing in the creative technology space. So it gives you a bit of a feel for what we do as a whole, but specifically today I wanted to talk about mobile. Now, the statement there, it seems pretty obvious as we move more towards a mobile world. Our clients are expecting mobile solutions, but when you look at this through the lens of the engineering industry in particular, traditionally engineering involves a lot of data, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of hardware. I'm not going to say it's slow to adopt the mobile industry, but it's certainly not as fast as some other industries have jumped on mobile. But we feel that the time is probably right for mobile now. We're finding that there's a lot of field and site apps for mobile engineering. There's a lot of opportunities for us to really sort of integrate with engineering solutions. Engineering as a whole is going on this great kind of digital journey through things like building information modeling, digital twins, asset management, all the engineering buzzwords. We feel there's a lot of hardware improvements at the moment that means it's quite easy for us to jump on it. Things like the Apple iPad Pro, which is what I'm running today, which we find, just compared to the last generation iPad Pro, like the generational leap, just in one release has been phenomenal. And then when you look at things like the Oculus Go, and in particular the Quest, which we're really, really excited about, that's coming out in a few weeks. And then also on the software side of things, not only within Unity, so things like the lightweight render pipeline and Collaborate, the partnerships with Autodesk, but then also things like the Substance Suite that really kind of speed up that iteration time, make it a lot cheaper for us to get results on mobile. So the way that I wanted to go through today is basically just go through a bunch of case studies. I want to do kind of less talking and more showing about just how we're using mobile across a bunch of different use cases, kind of broadly split up into two categories. The mobile apps that we're creating that are very much supplementing your traditional engineering workflows, but then also how we're starting to use apps in a more creative space to try and either win work or as a point of differentiation. So, first we're going to talk about is engineering support and integration, and again, this is how we can kind of supplement that traditional engineering. So the first app that I'm going to talk about is SiteLab, and what that is, it's a framework that we've developed for delivering real-time visualization. Now, I'm only going to touch on it really briefly here, but if you are interested in what you see when I give the live demo, last year at Melbourne, I gave a Unite presentation that was specifically on SiteLab, so it goes into a lot more detail into why we created it, the problems that it solves, and then a lot of the technical details around how we created some of the things inside SiteLab. one of the cool things, or we'll go through quickly the benefits. For us, why would a company invest in creating a framework for delivering real-time visualization? And that's kind of some of the things there. Very important when you're trying to differentiate yourself in the marketplace against your competitors. And kind of the top ones are really the most important for us. We wanted to create a framework that ensured that every time we delivered a piece of real-time visualization to any client, it looked the same, it felt the same, it had the same level of functionality, and it was something that was recognizable as an Oricon product. Now, one of the cool things about SiteLab, and again, I won't go too much into the technical details, but the way that we've set it up, you can see on the panel on the left-hand side is the big project wizards. So the idea is that we want to try and abstract away a lot of Unity features so that new users can basically go through these kind of bespoke project wizards that we've created to set up new projects and do things like adjust the project details, layers, cameras, environment systems. It uses multi-scene approach, which means that it's really easy to spin up mobile versions. We basically bring in all the assets, and then once we've got those, we can use the build configuration tool to say, right, this is going to be a Windows project, or this is going to be a mobile project. And for instance, the Sky system and the environment system that we use, it's different on mobile, and some other things have different considerations when you look at mobile versus desktop. So we have the multi-scene kind of scenario there where you say, okay, I'm going to build this for iOS. It's going to swap out all the current scenes with all the mobile specific scenes so you can get up and running very quickly. And I'm going to give you a demo. So what I'm on the iPad, so I'm switching basically between the PowerPoint presentation and the apps that I'm going to show you. So hopefully the multitasking and memory management doesn't kick me out of the PowerPoint presentation too often. So this is basically what SiteLab looks like. So what I'll do is I'll just very quickly increase some graphics settings. And just to give you an idea, on the last generation iPad Pro, this ran at about 20 frames per second. It was quite noticeably jittery, whereas on the new iPad Pro, it's like absolutely silky smooth. So again, that kind of hardware improvements is phenomenal in the mobile space. But this is basically what SiteLab is. So again, it's a framework that we created to deliver real-time visualization in the engineering space. So we wanted to make sure it had a bunch of features that were comfortable to people within that space, and it borrows a little bit from CAD and a few other things. So obviously you can maneuver yourself around the model using a variety of different cameras, including, say, a first-person camera where you can drop it in and you can walk around. Also animated cameras where you can just kind of hit play and walk away and forget. This is good if you want to set up a kiosk somewhere, which you can then pause, fast forward, pick from different cameras. So this is functioning on the iPad pretty much identical to the desktop version in terms of the functionality. We haven't had to kind of pare back any of the functionality, which is really great. It's got a full layer system, so if we wanted to, for instance, look at the services in this building, we could turn off the architectural layer, and then we'd have all the services. If I want to isolate just the structural elements, I can do that as well. And all of these panels are all resizable. It has the concept of extensions, which is where we kind of embed larger pieces of functionality that might not necessarily belong on every project. So for instance, in this one we've got this model information, and when I've got that selected, I can click on any element, and if there's any kind of BIM metadata associated with that element, then it's going to reveal that. The other extension that we've got is your optioneering extension, which in this particular demo is just the cul-de-sac out the front, but it could also be completely different design. So if you're looking at an infrastructure project, it could be two completely different intersections, for instance. I'll turn that off. We've also got, you can see whereabouts you're located in the world, and then you can also dynamically change the time of day, which is all physically accurate to that location. You can change it for pretty much any day of any month of any year. Different weather conditions. We have measurement tools. At the moment, they're just basically linear point-to-point measurements, but we're in the process of expanding that. And then also screenshot tools to not only capture screenshots with a bit of a rule of thirds guide there, but also you can basically go into a markup type system and mark your image up. And then you can get information about SiteLab or about the project. So that's basically SiteLab in a nutshell. So we've delivered well over 100 projects in SiteLab. We're finding that we're using it pretty much evenly split between internal projects. So our internal design teams would use SiteLab as a way of basically getting a design and then going through a collaborative design review process. And then our other use case is to deliver that to the client. One of the things that we're finding that we're doing quite a lot is if we have a 50% design review, for instance, we will send across your CAD documentation, your 3D models, and a SiteLab model for them to be able to actually interrogate the design. So that's SiteLab. So it's probably our biggest product that we build inside Unity. The next one I'm going to show you is an extension of SiteLab, which is how we're using SiteLab to integrate into other apps, non-Unity apps that we're building inside Oricon as well. So we have these two apps in particular that work together. They're called FieldForce and DrawingBox. Essentially, DrawingBox is a way of linking a physical asset with a database. We use QR codes, but it controls the linking of the two, the physical and the digital. And then what FieldForce is an on-site inspection tool where you can start to log inspections and status reports against particular assets. So they work quite nicely together because you would then scan your object in DrawingBox and then you would adjust the inspection report inside FieldForce. But the cool thing is that we've also got kind of SiteLab sitting there with the two. So SiteLab, through the fact that Unity is really great at being able to connect to a lot of external data sources, we've got SiteLab kind of sitting in the middle there, so you can actually use SiteLab as a way of being able to click on an asset and bring up your inspection data from FieldForce using the DrawingBox APIs, for instance. So I'm not sure if you can see what's going on, but on the left-hand side, we've clicked on an asset, which is a suitcase. And it's dynamically going into the database and pulling that information out. So it's all in real time. There's nothing kind of pre-baked. A big part of what we're doing is trying to really explore how we can use Unity to reach into external data sources, pull information in, make changes inside Unity and push it out. Traditionally something like Unity would be a bit of a dead end for data. A lot of stuff would go into Unity, but nothing would ever come out the other end. So it's a big thing for us to try and explore how we can just make it just one piece of this much larger kind of digital journey or data journey, I guess. And there's just another screenshot, just again demonstrating that it's another asset, a wireless router, which you can't really see on the right-hand side, but then it's bringing up that inspection data on the left. All right, so the next one that we're going to look at, so SiteLab is really great when you've got one particular site and one 3D model, but what if you've got a whole bunch of sites? This next one I'm going to show you is something that we put together for the New South Wales government, and it's basically more of a portfolio view of assets. So, we'd imagine that it would work in conjunction with something like SiteLab, where you would use this as a broad kind of overview of all your assets before drilling down into a particular asset inside SiteLab. So we'll jump into this one. All right, so you can see, and again, this is all built in Unity. I don't know if I need to preface that, but all the apps that I'm going to show you today are all built in Unity. So, it gives you a very broad overview of a particular area. In this case, it's schools within New South Wales. You can then basically drill down, and then, you could click on one, for instance, and it would bring up a whole bunch of information. And again, this can kind of reach in. So we just scraped all this information off the publicly available information off the web. You can see where it is. You can bring up statistics. You can see that even though they're grayed out, the images, drawings, and 3D models is again another way of being able to reach into sort of asset management databases. And then obviously once you've got all this information, you can start doing some really great things for it. So again, this is more, we see that something like this would be marketed towards kind of higher level management that don't necessarily need to know the detailed information about any one particular site, but want to start to get insights from a whole bunch of sites. And you can see kind of down the bottom, it's kind of constantly updating the information that's present on the screen. You've got a bunch of different filters for how you display the information. And again, this is just a concept that we've worked up, but we think that it could turn into a very powerful tool, especially in the, property development, for instance. If you've got, a Mirvac, which might have, hundreds of properties, and you really want to be able to just get this kind of broad portfolio level view of that. All right, the next one is looking at how you can start to use Unity as a bit of a visual kind of interface for BMS data or the Internet of Things. And I think that that's something that Unity in particular is really great for, again, because it talks to so many different data sources. It's very logical to place it at the center as the visual interface for a lot of hard engineering data. So this is an example that we worked up in our Sydney office. And I should point out that this information is baked just into this app because you need to normally be on site to be able to access it. But essentially it's just a stylized view of the office, which you can then pull the roof off. You can see a typical floor. And then we've got a bunch of sensors installed throughout the building, which you can then kind of click on and you can understand the light levels, movements, humidity and loudness. One of the things that we're really looking forward to is integration with Autodesk Forge, especially within the IoT and the BMS kind of space. There's a huge amount of potential to really build some smart BMS systems, again with Unity kind of being that visual front end that allow you to tap into all your building information and then not only bring it in, but then to also make changes directly in the app which affect the building itself. Alright, so the next lot of examples that I'm going to show you are more around the kind of experience. So these aren't necessarily things that we built to supplement engineering in the traditional engineering sense, but they're things that we've built to either try and win bids and proposals or to try and market products more in that kind of creative space. So the first one is an example of a tender submission that Oricon submitted only just a few weeks ago for the feasibility for a large kind of property development in Dubai. And as a way to differentiate Oricon rather than just submit a paper proposal, we also gave them an iPad Pro with this app preloaded, which I will bring up now. So the idea is that it's a way, you know, in one sense it's a way for us to try and cheat the system a little bit by squeezing a little bit more information into this app than what you could put into the feasibility or the proposal, depending on how rigid the proposal is. But essentially this is the site. Again, because it's in such an early phase, we went with a stylized kind of graphical approach. But you can do things like have different views. So at the moment you've got a basic 3D orbit. I'll just change, you can also change the time. I'll change the time so it's a bit easier to see. As well as the 3D orbit view, which you can also kind of zoom in. We also have an overhead aerial view, and then you can then pull that back out to a much wider kind of vector map view of the area to see how it fits in with the wider area. Again, you can change the time of day. You know, evening we've just got indicative lights, but one of the things that we really want to explore is how we can start to push that kind of mobile light graphics. You can click on these kind of buttons and you can go in and you can view a typical apartment, which you can then change the colour schemes based on what the client has released. So you can understand that it could start to be used as a tool to actually sell development or sell rentals or properties. And the other thing that you can do is you can access all the information, all the CAD information. So we can look at the plans for each of the different styles of buildings. We can look at you know, the typical elevation views, and we can also look at the landscaping drawings. The other thing is we were going to put our actual feasibility report in here until we found out it was about 250 pages long, and that we made the decision that the mobile probably wouldn't be able to handle that, because we have to rasterize the PDFs. Each page is a separate image. So that's that app. The next one we've got is it's a similar type app, but it goes into a lot more detail about the usage of the space. So this is a big project in Melbourne, part of the University of Melbourne. We did a bunch of creative services, including kind of the full fly-through feature film for the marketing. But in addition to that, we created this app that was available for the public to really kind of understand the way that the building works and the spaces. So I'll bring that up now. So again, we've gone with a bit of a stylized view. You can see that there's a few more options though, but there's a lot more 360 areas of 360, and this takes the renders that we created directly from the feature film of all the different spaces. But then we can also have a look at the different building uses. So for instance, retail. We can understand what parts of those buildings is retail versus what's commercial, versus what's owned by the university, the science gallery, or the super floor, which is inside the atrium area, which you can see there. There's a few different viewpoints that you can select. So in addition to the, this kind of orbiting thing, we can also come down to street level. And again, you can kind of still access all the 360s from the street level. Or we can, again, look at that bird's eye view, and if you go out to a certain point, then it really reveals the vector map. We also have the gallery, where we can look at renders that we've created of the building, or we could look at, again, the floor plans. But another cool thing is that we can look at the view lines for each of the particular floors, so you can get an idea of kind of what it would look like from those floors. And I would just,
I think everything we know about innovation tells us that
play this film. This is an idea of the feature film rendering that we also did for the project.
Co-working spaces around the world, and it tells us that there's something about the environment in which you work that makes a really big difference.
There is no doubt that we're facing some really big challenges on a societal level. And so putting together great minds, rising talent, and co-locating them next to each other so that they bump into each other and start to think through problems in different ways, I think we've got a real chance at solving some of those problems.
All of our lives are going to be touched by digital transformations, from artificial intelligence to big data to automation. I believe we'll look back in 50 years' time and see a lot of those innovations starting at Melbourne Connect.
All right, I think you get the idea. So that was the Melbourne Connect app. Now the next one that I want to show you is, this is a really fun one for us because, to date, a lot of the work that we've done, it wouldn't really be considered to be a game, whereas this one was an opportunity for us to actually create something that's more in that kind of gaming sphere, a gamified experience. It was basically a commission that we got from RMS to build a boat simulator game that they played at the Sydney Boat Show last year. So we built two different versions of this. The first was a big system that was on a desktop, and it had two kind of televisions, like a big television in front of you, and then a smaller one down there, and it had a steering wheel and a joystick. It was really fun to play, but then also to supplement that, because obviously you need to be there to be able to do that. So to supplement that, we created the mobile app as well, which I'll just quickly run you through now. And you can select your character. The idea of the app is to educate people on maritime law. So, you have to pick your safety equipment. So we'll just go to those ones. And then you basically have to drive the boat, and you have to make sure that you pass on the right side of the buoys and follow all the rules. And if you crash your boat, then you lose, or if you don't do it in the required time, then you lose. And we decided to use the built-in kind of accelerometer of the device to do that. And it was a bit of fun because we got to kind of flex a little bit more creative muscle than what you would traditionally be allowed to do in an engineering project. We have somebody that works for us that's big into his chip tunes, so he did all the audio, the low poly style. He had a lot of fun making the shaders for the sky and things like that. So it was good because, again, it had a definite engineering purpose, but it was also quite a bit of fun, and it was really, really well received by RMS as well, which is the icing on the cake for that one. All right, and the last example that I'll show you in this category is an internal app that we've developed to try and market to the resources sector, in particular around kind of port management. And again, it kind of illustrates how we can use Unity as the central point to bring in a whole bunch of information. So, as you can see, it's still an internal tool. We don't have any sort of fancy loading screens yet, but the idea is that, if this was a real site, this would be hooking into live information. We can watch, it could hook into the vessels, their real-time movements as they approach and leave. We can click on the different warehouses and bring up a bunch of information. We could see exactly what they've got in inventory. We can view security cameras. We can have kind of, if there's some sort of emergency situation, I think, where is it? Not that one. Oh yeah, you can click on the boats and understand exactly what's in them, information about the berth, what's kind of coming in. You can see that it can have a notification system for when particular jobs are complete. If you have an alert type situation, you go, oh, okay, so we've got a fire in this particular warehouse. All right, fire detected. Let's look at that. Yep, okay, there's a fire. So let's confirm the fact that there's a fire. Yes, and so on and so forth. So again, it's all taking hard engineering data. It's taking things that exist already, but it's wrapping them around a user interface which we're building inside Unity. To be able to deliver that. All right, so very, very briefly going to touch on mobile VR because it's a very important part of mobile, and in particular, we've looked at things like the Oculus Go, and we're very excited about the Oculus Quest. Some work that we did for Brisbane Airport Corporation around their terminal wayfinding. So they had an issue with people not understanding where they need to go when they get off the aeroplane to go through the entry control points. So what we did is, Brisbane Airport Corporation, they commissioned a wayfinding report, which we then took in and we basically built it all up inside VR. It was originally designed for the HTC Vive. We invited BAC in and we set up the Vive, and they basically went through the design, and if they didn't like something, they could actually start to change it and move it directly inside the VR simulation, which would then update the design files. We wanted to see how far we could push the Oculus Go. So after we'd finished and wrapped up this project as a bit of an internal test for us, we thought we'd stick it on the Go and see how it went. And this was the end result. And we're super, super happy with the performance that we managed to squeeze out of it. I mean, it's not a particularly big scene, but there is a bit going on in there, and you'll see in a second that it's retained all the full functionality in terms of being able to start to manipulate information. Sorry, I know that light's not ideal on that bottom half of the screen there. So again, we set this up down at Brisbane Airport Corporation, and a bunch of stakeholders went through. It was a success, and one of the anecdotes that comes out of it that I like to tell is that the head of border security, he chucked the headset on and jumped into the simulation, and he went into the main ECP area, which you'll see in a second. We'll jump into once we go through duty free, and he realised that if you stand at one corner of the room, the height of the glass balustrade was too high. It obscured his view into the opposite corner of the room, and something like that would be terribly, terribly difficult to pick up using traditional means. Whereas in VR, he picked it up straight away. So you see it's that glass balustrade just there. When you're looking into the far corner, He thought that it was an issue with sightlines, a potential security issue. The problem was that the balustrade was getting manufactured like at the time, so he literally pulled his headset off and like pulled out his mobile phone and was like stop work immediately on that, which was quite nice because I mean just the cost saving in that compared to rework, it probably paid for the entire VR model that we'd created to date. All right, so look, that's about it from me. So again, in conclusion, we feel like the time's right to really start to jump on mobile with a lot of intent. Up until this point, mobile's always kind of been there. We knew that we could do it. There was always a lot of caveats. It was, you know, difficult. Whereas now we're like, nah, we're jumping on mobile. And there's opportunities both for kind of those bespoke apps like these last ones that I showed you, but then also apps that really tap into the existing ecosystems that support traditional engineering. And again, mobile adoption is only going to increase, we know that, but in particular in the engineering industry, we're seeing a huge explosion of mobile devices being used for engineering purposes. So some of the things that we're looking forward to is off-device processing. An unnamed competitor has just announced pixel streaming. We are very, very interested to see what Unity brings to the table for that. We see that as a key issue for mobile adoption, especially in the engineering phase, because I mean, when you think about it, like a lot of mobile apps, you know, you're building specifically for mobile, you're optimizing right from the word go for mobile. You're not having to deal with a Revit file of a mechanical services of a building that's got 20 million polygons, for instance. So being able to shift some of that processing power off the device is critical for us. Things like foveated rendering for mobile VR, obviously, again, it's all about performance and increasing that any way we can. So in the same vein, you know, we're looking forward to things like 5G mobile data, because obviously that's going to supplement things like off-device processing. If you're constantly streaming data, you know, you need to be able to do that in an efficient manner. Thanks very much. Do you do questions? I'm not sure. If you have any questions, I think I'm 5 minutes early, so if you've got any questions, otherwise, thank you very much, everybody.